Okay, so the history of yoga in my life probably is some, and it just dawned on me when you were talking a lot that, what's his name, Riddleman?
Heidelman?
Heidelman.
Yeah. Ritalin?
So that dude back in the 60s and 70s on Channel 9 probably was my first indoctrination, or initiate, I don't know what you want to call it, introduction to yoga. And then, of course, you know, because I was a child of the 70s, and then the Beatles went over to India and came back all Hindued out, so that made an impression. And then when I became a young adult, you could do these like continuing education things through the University of Washington. I don't know what they call them. It wasn't a university course, but people would, you'd pay them some money and go to their rear department in Queen Anne and take a yoga class on the carpet. I did that. And then, what else? You know, I just always was interested in anything Eastern. I guess I was drawn to Eastern philosophies and so forth. And then I was super excited when I found out that Monroe was going to have a yoga studio, and I couldn't quite figure out how that could possibly be a thing. But yay! And then I was here on the very first day that Bliss opened up.
Absolutely.
And I've been here kind of ever since, except COVID times. So yay!
That was great. Well, it's beautiful that you have all of that lineage from yoga, and it's always been in the background as far as not just the physical asana.
Well, if you're our age, you know,
Yep.
it was part of the culture.
Ravi Shankar, right?
Yep.
All that. That's my first Indian word, I think.
Daughter's like Nora Davis, right?
Yeah,
She's
that's
okay.
one of them. He has two.
That beautiful gal who plays the sitar.
Yeah. I have a couple of her albums too. It's gorgeous. She has a wonderful voice. But yeah, Nora Jones too. So, all right, who's next? Okay.
I don't even know. I used to be very competitive and very fast-moving sports, basketball, softball, rugby, things like that, and I needed something to slow down and ground me almost. So I found yoga, but it wasn't what I had wanted it to be at the time until I went to college and I took a yoga class, and just for an extra gym credit or something, and I fell in love with it. I started doing it as a daily practice and adding more moves in and learning the postures. After that, I feel like I started to resonate more with me, and kind of in my day-to-day life, I would think about it when I wasn't doing it, and think about slowing down and getting on my mat. And it then became this safe space for me. If I was feeling uncomfortable, I would then go and lay on my mat, or that was the time of the day that nobody could mess with me. That was my own area. I feel like I then got out of it for a little while and just kind of what's the point? What's the point in me doing this? And I found a great studio in New Hampshire that kind of brought me back in with loving arms. I went there and it was older ladies, it was me and my friend, and then everybody else was retired age. And we got there and they loved us. They were okay, you're coming all the time now. This is great. And it was just such a warm community. There were, I think, 8 of us in the class, and we would always sit head to head essentially in a small room. And it was just such a welcoming feeling that I love to think back to that and remember how loved I felt in that time. And I think every time I bring out my mat, I remember that and how loved I am on my mat. And it kind of just translates into yoga showed me that I love myself and I'm okay with myself and I'm cool with my body and I can take up this space and I can move. I'm thankful I can move. I'm thankful I can be here. And I feel like that's what yoga is to me now, is how thankful I am for myself for physically being here.
Amazing. Well, that's what yoga means. Union. Mm-hmm. The union of mind, body, and breath, but also you with yourself. Mm-hmm. So, beautiful. Yeah, absolutely. Okay, who's next?
I started probably in 2018 with a solid drive to come here more consistently, and this was my first actual studio and introduction to yoga. I mean, I was over at before Drive shut down. I'd taken just a regular class just to introduce them to it, but I really didn't get into it until I came here. And then it was pretty consistent, and practice without even knowing like what it does to you. That's kind of what happened to me here. And then obviously COVID hit, and we all kind of stepped back. But you know, they still connected. You know, they were still like, "How are you doing? What are you doing?" You know, they bring you in even if you weren't there. And somehow there's like this internal connection between all of you, whether you're, you know, being brought in for just like a quick little sneak-ins, you know, like studio and whatever. But I mean, it's just weird how the community is brought, and it's just, I don't know. I got into it. I don't know. I wasn't really doing it for the weight loss, but kind of more focused on that when I started. And then all of a sudden, like you look in the mirror one day, and like it wasn't even the weight loss that I was after. It was like my mind started changing, the connections that I had with people started changing, friendships started changing, the things that I was letting go in life started like dropping without even me realizing, you know, the people I was around. And I don't know, even now, so I injured myself at work pretty good, and I had shoulder surgery in November. And from January of 23, I was going to doctors, and it started off with, you have a strain. And then they were telling me, oh, well, you're old, you have arthritis, you know. I'm like, no, that's not correct. I was doing headstands, you know, like I have all of this, you know, that I referred back to, and, you know, even battle people that, like, doctors and all that stuff that say, hey, there's something, you know, there's nothing's wrong with you. I'm like, no, trust me, there's something wrong with me, you know, like, yoga teaches you to listen to yourself even when you don't know how to listen to yourself, you know. So, you know, by the end of it, I was able to, like, pinpoint what was going on with me, and, I mean, it's weird. It's almost indescribable sometimes, like, what yoga does for you and, like, how your practice changes. So, I just kind of went on with this journey even more.
Well, it's going to continue to change, trust me. A lot. Who's next?
Yes, I'll go.
Okay.
So I've dabbled in yoga off and on for probably like 15 years, but really dabbled, right? Went to studios that were pretty harsh on form. I'm never going to be that person that has the posture perfectly, which is why I love the studio, right? It's just not my body. And so I get frustrated, and I stop and go do something else, and I come back and forth. When Marianne opened the studio, I was excited. Started coming, and then I had a pretty traumatic medical experience. And then about 2 years ago, and then I decided to retire. So now I'm like, okay, who am I? Right? Like, work always defined me. I had this traumatic experience, and so my husband came in, and he got me a punch card. Well, he gave me a gift card, and Christiana wrote a note in it. Because she recognized my name, and I hadn't been in for a while, and she didn't know my husband, right? She said, I know Gina, can I write a note? And it was just so sweet. And so I started coming back. I thought, okay, I'll use up all my punch cards and then figure out, I felt like I needed to go to a gym or something because my whole body had like gone through this huge traumatic thing, right? And then I started coming, and it was just like, Marianne just embraced me, you just embraced me, and I just felt like it was my community. And I just have seen this whole transformation. I did the 30-day challenge, which was amazing. And you guys have been with me through all my surgeries, and yoga just became my place. And finding myself both physically and mentally was the big thing. Because mentally, I really lost myself too. Right now, who's this new person? So that's how I found yoga and came here.
Well, yoga found you. And you found yoga, definitely. We're glad you're here. All of you. Absolutely. Okay.
So it's kind of similar. I feel like I was in and out of yoga for a long time, and a lot of my studios were everything we talked about last night, which were negative. I had a lot of people moving me, touching me, telling me my form was poor. It was really not great experience, and I wasn't really getting anything out of it for a long time either. I kind of got into it because I was in so many car accidents as a child. My body was completely riddled. I couldn't sit up straight. I couldn't touch my toes. I couldn't do really anything physical. I couldn't participate in sports. It was kind of a mess. And it wasn't really until I found hot yoga that it was transformational for me. That was the first time I walked into a hot room. I felt just the heat of the room, the space. I felt like I could feel people moving with me. It was a completely different experience. And then my body started getting better exponentially. It was kind of a combination of yoga and chiropractics, but I was standing up straighter. I was moving into postures better. I was able to hold myself. I was getting stronger. And and just trying to trust myself and honestly trying to fill my cup too. I think I got into a space where I really stopped doing things for myself. I think the pandemic really exacerbated that to a certain degree, but I got really focused on just like survival and day to day. And yoga, especially when I moved out here, kind of became my safe space. I was so happy the day I found Bliss. I cried in my first class, well, with my procedure. I just straight up stayed on the mat for 10 minutes and just cried because I felt so blessed that this was here. And that this community existed.
There's a reason we have that.
And I'm eager to just learn more. I feel like my journey's not over with yoga and how much using it. I just want to learn as much as I possibly can. So,
Beautiful.
They're past that shit over here.
So for the camera, I'm Lori, and so I can remember, as far as back as I can remember, let's just say 2 years old, making friends. My parent, you go with your mom and you go in your play groups, and it starts as early as that. I just felt like I never belonged anywhere. We lived on a farm. I loved it. Your parents trying to get you into 4-H and doing all those types of things. I loved that. And then when I was 12, we sold the farm. We were picked up and taken to the city, which was Spokane at the time. Thrown into this massive, big middle school. Never felt like I belonged. And I was, just in and out of schools. In through my early teens, through high school. I had my son when I was 21. I was married. Never felt like that for me. Like, I loved him, my husband at the time, but there was just something else, and I kept reaching out for all the wrong things, all the addictions you can get, and I'm still a good mom, but I still felt like something was missing. And so, ended up moving over here to Western Washington, still trying to just find my place, never feeling secure and safe, and always looking for something. But COVID came, and I was married to my husband that I have now. We've been married now almost 20 years. So when COVID came, I was a mess. I lost so much weight. I couldn't eat. I was a shell of a person. And then I always knew that this studio was here. And then one day I was sitting on my bed, nobody was home, and I was thinking, I don't want to feel like I want to die. Like I need something. Well, in my group of friends that I had at the time, I saw a couple of them were starting to change. And then some of the other girls were like, she's so weird now. She doesn't, why doesn't she want to drink? Why doesn't she want to, all these things that we would do. And I, sitting in the background, was looking at them like, wow, their transformation is beautiful. And I got more curious about it, but I never said anything to my friends. I found out that they had been going to yoga and were, their shells were filling. Like you get your cup filled, they were becoming something that I was like, wow. And so during COVID, I was messy. After COVID, I knew that the studio was open, and so I got on my phone and I booked a class, and I'm like, well, I just paid for it, I guess I have to go. So I dug out some gross clothes out of my closet and go, what do you even wear? And that's what I was worried about. What am I going to look like? What am I going to wear? And I was so skinny, but the clothes that I had were hanging off me. I'm like, well, this is the best I got. So I came and I walked through that door, and Diana Visa was standing back there, and she just, like, her energy, just all these things just took me in, and it was the most wonderful experience, and I laid on my mat and cried afterwards, and knew from that moment I needed this place every day. Like, I had never felt that I belonged, and so I felt like I belonged here, but as I've learned the last few years of coming and changing, yes, things have fallen off in my life. I no longer drink as much as I used to. I've had to let people go because they're not, I know that behind my back they're going, I know this. It's okay, they're allowed to. But more than anything that I belong, I belong, I know who I am, and it's all in here now. Like, I'm not going to find happiness there, I'm not going to find fulfillment. So I'm learning through yoga that it's inside of here, it's me. That's where I belong, and that's where I'm going to find solace. So. And I'm getting support from my family. They think I'm weird, but when my son said, "You're kind of the weird mom," and he meant it in a sweet way because I know my son, and that was like one of the biggest compliments I think I've ever had. It was so funny. And so, yeah, I'm just going to keep on keeping on.
Amazing. Absolutely amazing history. And it is history because it's part of your life. It won't go away. It will always be there. And when you come into this place, it's a remarkable thing that happened when I got here. I met Mary Ann as I was coming out of teacher training. I guess I'll look at the camera. Probably got about 10 seconds left of battery anyway. And for the camera, my name's Olaf, and I'll have everybody introduce themselves before we turn it off. And as I told the story earlier, my mom did yoga in the 60s in front of the TV watching that Yoga for Health show. And I did my first Happy Baby because it was easy. And he did Happy Baby, and I said, I can do this all day. And he usually did, right? And then over the years, I just completely forgot about that. And I, did the gym thing and everything else. I ran, I skied, I hiked, I climbed. But it just wasn't, it was just too easy not to. And so when I decided to start yoga, I walked into a studio in Federal Way, and there was my high school student who was now teaching the class. And she goes, "Mr. B?" And I said, "Yeah, Angela." She's like, "I can't believe this." And I said, "Well, I guess we just flipped it around here. And now you're the teacher, and I'm the student." And I think yoga's been like that for me for the entire time that I've been involved in it. You're always a teacher, and you're always a student. And so when I said to myself, I'm going to do this yoga thing, I did it for a couple of years. I got tapped on the shoulder, and somebody said, "Do you know this is your 1,000th class? You've been coming here for 2 years." So that was pretty, I was like, okay, I guess I do a couple doubles. And but one day, Angela, who was going to teach that morning, got stuck in traffic and couldn't make it into the class. And these 3 Polynesian ladies at the back of the room said, "You go. You hit all time. You know what to do. You know what to do." And so I did. I started teaching a Hatha class. And I'm like, oh, God, what's next? Oh, yeah, that's right. How long do I was 30. And Angela walked in with about 5 minutes left, and I said, "If you want to take over." She goes, "Nope, you finish up." And when I walked out the door, she said, "You know what you have to do now." And so I went to teacher training that summer. And started teaching. And Mary Ann had gone to the same training just after my class. She started her training. And we met and hit it off as good buddies and talked a lot about yoga, and she wanted to open a studio. And over time, she said, "I found a place. If I open a studio, you will come up and teach for me." And I said, "Okay," but not realizing how far away Monroe was from Federal Way. But I did it. I commuted. I came up here, put in all these lights, painted the walls, did all kinds of stuff in the studio. We all worked really, really hard, put it all together, and opened up March 6 years ago. And it's been a joyride ever since, because I found myself in yoga, and when I found myself in yoga, I found that I could teach yoga. I could share yoga. A lot of times I don't feel like I'm teaching, I'm just sharing my knowledge. And I you're learning something from that, that's wonderful. And that's part of yoga too. It really is. So we're all teachers and we're all students. So that's my little history. So
Is
it's
that
really
Angela?
beautiful.
Angela Flaney?
That's her. That was her. And she had a partner that opened up a place called Elevate. They went from HYI, which was run by sort of a draconian woman whose main thing was profit margin.